Hello, I'm going to show how to use the free ReShade graphical utility to fix blurry graphics in a couple games. The first one is the PS3 port of X-Men in the emulator RPCS3. Let's run RPCS3. Actually, I guess I might as well run the ReShade setup first. Okay, so I'm going to point to ReShade setup to RPCS3.exe. That's the emulator's executable. And we're running in Vulkan, which is the default renderer for RPCS3, so that would be the one to pick. There's a caveat to that we'll get to later. I only want the adaptive sharpen filter under legacy effects. Oh, I guess I just have to slowly uncheck these other ones. It will still install some default effects, which is irritating, but I'll show you how to clear those out. So don't need that stuff. Okay. So ReShade is now installed for RPCS3. When I run RPCS3.exe, and choose the game X-Men, or launch the game X-Men. Wait a second, I forgot something, I think. I need X-Men, hello, to be on Vulkan. Okay, it is. Well, so here's a ReShade. The home button opens ReShade. I can skip the tutorial. There's my filter that I want, adaptive sharpen. Let's skip ahead in the game itself so you can see the blurriness that I am wanting to fix, because this all looks very sharp. Thanks, Konami. It's 1080p, etc., etc. Everything looks good. I should have my volume thing plugged in. But this is blurry. The game screen is blurry, not the UI. UI looks fine. I'm going to pause here. And the home button brings up ReShade. So I'm going to enable the adaptive sharpen filter. It makes it sharper. I want even more sharpening because this one is so blurry. I'm going to pick 1.5. So now you can see as I toggle this back and forth, it really sharpens things up. It kind of makes the game a lot more fun for my eyeballs, I guess. I don't know. So that's great and all, right? So you might think, but there are problems that I ran into. For one thing, it's prone to crashing RPCS3 when quitting the game, I found. Although, if I leave this running, I've been having trouble getting it to crash obligingly on me lately. See, it's not crashing on me now. Come on, game. No. Just crash for me once so that people don't think I'm making this up. Gosh dang it. This was crashing unavoidably on me before. Now it only crashes once in a while. So this is sort of a boring demonstration since it's not crashing. What if I just run some other thing? Maybe I can crash that one. Take your time, Virtua Tennis. Okay. There you go, there's a crash. So, yeah, and I ran this crash by the, I filed it as an issue on the RPCS3 GitHub, and they said, well, this isn't really our thing, because it's crashing in modules that we are not accessing ourselves. So, and they responded very quickly, so that was fine. So, you know, I mean, that seems fair. It's too bad because there are other issues where people say, you know, RPCS3 doesn't have this ability, but just use ReShade to do it. Oh well. However, there are workarounds that can get this working, but come on and finish crashing. Okay. Another thing that is perhaps not desirable is that if you only want that sharpening running for X-Men, it's going to be active for you know, anything you run in RPCS3, so you'd have to go and toggle that filter on or off. Oh, I just did this wrong. But yeah, you know, come in here and have to turn this back off. And by the way, if you do that, then it won't crash. Also, if you bring up the home menu, and I'm not sure what, is there a shortcut for the home menu? If you bring up the home menu, I can do it on my DualShock by hitting the PS button on my DualShock. And then if I exit game that way, that does not trigger the crash either. I mean, it wouldn't have crashed there anyway because I had the sharpening filter turned off. But that would not have produced a crash. But having to toggle the effects on and off is kind of a pain. That's no fun. So fortunately, there is sort of a workaround for both the crash and having to toggle the effects. And that is simply to set the specific game you want this to work in, which is X-Men, as to a different renderer. So OpenGL is basically the other one. So set it to OpenGL. If I set this to OpenGL and all my others are on Vulkan, which is, I believe, the default, and then I have to run ReShade setup and change it so that it is pointing at OpenGL. And I don't have to test. Oh, well, I do want to get rid of those other effects that I'm not going to use. And I don't know if there's a right way to do that, but what I do is I just go in here and delete all the other .fx files. I don't know about these FXH ones. I don't touch those. Those don't show up in the list anyway. But I'm deleting the other FX ones. I think that's okay. I don't really know what I'm doing. Anyway, now that I have done all this stuff. Oh, one other thing I can do. Actually, there's two other things I can do to sort of quote-unquote optimize ReShade, which is so if I have this set like I want, set to 1.5, I can check performance mode, and supposedly it says reload all effects in a more optimal representation that can give a performance boost, disables variable tweaking. I don't know how much performance boost that's going to give, but anyway, I can do that. Also, under add-ons, the filtering I'm using does not seem to require these default add-ons. So I can uncheck generic depth and affect runtime sync, and then you have to run the application again in order for that to happen. So what am I doing? Stop. Okay, so if I do that and I start the application again, then those should be fine. This is now running in OpenGL, right? Instead of Vulkan. All my other games are in Vulkan. So for one thing, that crash does not happen in OpenGL. I can hit stop and it doesn't crash. That's with the, oh, well, it wasn't active. So here's the thing active. We can get to the game itself and verify that it's active. Hello, come on, let me play the game. That's not it. So yes, we can see it is sharpening here. That is on. But I can have it on and I kill the X-Men game and it does not crash. And if I run some other game, because all these other games are set on the Vulkan renderer rather than the OpenGL renderer, there's no reshade in them. I'm hitting the home button, nothing happens. You didn't see that reshade greeting. There's no actual sharpening going on. I'm very paranoid about this, so I compared screenshots, and it is definitely not doing any sharpening in the other games. So that's good. So basically that has solved the problem, which is that I had one game that was blurry, and it also produced a crash, although I think that was happening in other games, because I got it to happen in Virtua Tennis 3 when using the stop button to get out of the game with that filter active, with the AdaptiveSharpen.fx active. But when I set just this one game to OpenGL, and then I set ReShade to OpenGL in its setup, that means that ReShade only is operating on this one game, X-Men, and because for whatever reason the OpenGL doesn't have that crash, so problem solved. No crash, and it's only doing the sharpening on the one game I wanted it to do it on, because that's the one that is set up for OpenGL, which is what ReShade is set to. So pretty cool. So that solved that blurry game for me. Thanks, ReShade. The other blurry game I have, or should I say had, is Fire Pro Wrestling World. So this is a standalone game, so you don't have to worry about like your ReShade settings here affecting any other games, of course, because when you run ReShade setup, you just point it to the Fire Pro Wrestling World.exe. So I have the FX turned off right now, and as you can see, even in the menus, the game is kind of blurry. Like, I think this is actually a 480p game. In fact, looking at old Steam forum discussions, it looks like, according to them, when this game came out, it didn't even have higher screen size options. I'm not sure if 480p was the only one, but one thing I've noticed even now is that when you install the game fresh and you come and check the screen size, it looks like it's set to, I mean, the indicator is on 854 by 480, even though it actually says up here 1920 by 1080. The selection indicator is on 480, like it's still thinks it's installed it to 480. So I don't know. This game, I suspect, is still kind of basically running at 480 and just upscaling or something. And that would explain why it's blurry. It's always been a 480 game, you know, from the PS2 days, and before that in Dreamcast. And before that it was a 240p game, I suppose. So anyway, let's demonstrate the blurriness. Come with me, random wrestlers. Alright, so I noticed two things about the graphics in this game. One is that very blurry. Just everything looks fuzzy and misty. Secondly, the color is pretty, it's just kind of like a light gray washout. Like, where's the contrast? Where's the saturation, you know? So fortunately, we've got ReShade to take care of stuff like this. This one I use two filters for. One is good old Adaptive Sharpen. It's on check performance mode so we can see the settings. I just leave that at default 1 for this one. And the other is HDR. I forget which collection of filters that's under. I think it might be under the SweetFX one, which is maybe the second one down. I forget. So that one adds contrast and color saturation. So basically, and that's just the default setting I'm using here as well. So basically those two seem to fix the problem. It might even be slightly too dark. So if I wanted to really get persnickety, I could turn the HDR effect down slightly maybe, but I actually kind of like this. So, so there's that. I have a couple other effects in here I was messing around with. I don't think they're ones that I would use for a long period because they do make the game harder to see, but like Nostalgia is pretty fun. I haven't checked on dithering, that's not the default, but so it puts in this scan line effect, and then you can pick different old computer or console palettes to overlay on the game and filter through. So that's kind of wacky. The dithering helps with some of that real darkness, but you can have like a Commodore VIC-20 type look to it. There are different... Oh, there's only one other scan line. Yeah, so that doesn't make a big difference. But anyway, that's kind of fun, but it is sort of hard to see what's going on. There's a few that are... a few palettes that are a little easier to see, like... let's see... Atari ST, for instance. Also Amstrad CPC. But this was one I found when I was looking for some way to sharpen the graphics that wasn't like a strict sharpening filter. You do get some kind of weird Moiri patterns and stuff, or I keep forgetting which buttons I'm hitting. I'm on the keyboard, which is not what I'm usually doing in this game. So anyway, there's that, if you want to mess around with that. There's also AdvancedCRT, which is, I think, called just CRT.fx. Yeah, and in the list, it's again on one of those first couple collections of FX. This one makes it... let me reset these to default, I guess. This makes it kind of look like an old CRT monitor, and it puts a frame around the outside of the screen, and then you can change the parent resolution, but it's rather blurry itself, so I'm not super keen on that. But it's another way to add scan lines if you want. And I think there's other CRT filters that you can find in the other collections. So yeah, but anyway, those are not ones I'd really use because they do make it harder to see. Basically, Adaptive Sharpen. So here's without the filters. And it's blurry and washed out. Whereas if we turn on Adaptive Sharpen and FakeHDR, nice and sharp and saturated. So there you go. So that's my two blurry games to cure using ReShade. So hurrah! Thanks ReShade, and thank you for watching. I didn't even hit a button there. Wait a second, is this on CPU? No, it's me. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, anyway. Thanks ReShade for fixing blurry old games. And, yeah, that's all. See you later.